Welcome to day 3, Project Management Framework, the architecture of success, foundations, processes, and the glue that holds it all together. So, objectives for day 3. Understand the 5 process groups and 49 processes of the project management or PMBOK. Differentiate between project management processes and the project lifecycle. That's important. Explore the interactions between inputs, tools, techniques, and outputs, or ITTOs, and then gain familiarity with how the framework integrates across domains. So, what is project management framework? The project management framework provides the structure for managing a project effectively. Think of it as the scaffolding that supports your climb to success. It consists of 1, process groups, 2, knowledge areas, and 3, processes, right? And then I have a flow chart right there below or above those 3 that kind of gives you a visual of how to look at project management framework. So, getting into the process groups, the 5 pillars. 1, you have the initiating phase, right? Defines the project at a high level. The main goals are to approve the project and identify stakeholders. And we'll get into this in greater depth moving forward, probably next week. But the key outputs are going to be the project charter and the stakeholder register, right? It's important that you get the project approved so that you can start on it. So it's just initiating the project itself. An example is drafting a project charter for launching a new product line. This product line is going to serve as a business package, or it's going to serve value to the company and the organization, obviously, or they wouldn't have gone through with the project to begin with. The second phase is going to be the planning phase, or the planning process group, which outlines how the project will be executed, monitored, and controlled. Right? Main goals for this is going to be to establish baselines for scope, schedule, and cost, and then some key outputs are going to be to is going to be the project management plan, the scope baseline, schedule baseline, and cost baseline. And what this is you are planning a project and you want to understand, okay, what are we solving for, which is the scope baseline, or planning for? What is the schedule in which we want to complete it, which is the schedule baseline? And then the cost baseline is how much money we want to spend or resources we want to expend in order for us to complete the project. And so an example for this is developing a detailed project plan for constructing a commercial building, right? You're going to have those baselines that help you gauge later on where you are in the process. So moving into the next phase and process group is the executing phase, or executing process group, right? This is where you carry out the work defining the project plan, right? The main goals are to deliver the project outputs, and then the key outputs are deliverables, issue log, and performance data, right? And deliverable meaning the things that you are solving for, like the scope is solving for, or you're looking to accomplish with this project, right? This is what the stakeholders are going to say, okay, yay or nay on, based on the criteria that was given in the planning phase. And then the issue log, right? Issue log, we'll learn more about this and we'll get in deeper dive, but the issue log is exactly what it says. It logs issues that you are having within the project that later in the monitoring and controlling phase allow you to change in order for you to continue to move on with the project itself. And the performance data that helps you understand how the processes are moving while you are executing it. So the 4th phase that we're moving into is the monitoring and controlling phase. It tracks, reviews, and adjusts project progress. The main goals are to ensure project stays aligned with baselines. And then the key outputs are performance reports, change requests, right? Understanding where you are, how you're performing, where are the inefficiencies, where can we improve, right? And then also some issues that we've run into, how are we going to change them? Let's implement them. Let's go get them improved so that we can change them and move forward with the project. An example is adjusting the project schedule due to unforeseen delays, right? You have a schedule baseline, and now we need to adjust the schedule baseline because we have some unforeseen delays. So that's where you put the change request in, and now you're moving forward with the new baseline. So before I get into closing, which is the final and 5th phase, I want to talk about how executing and monitoring and controlling are done simultaneously, they're done in conjunction, so that you guys understand that these phases aren't consistently subsequent, right? You will have phases, and mainly only these 2, that are done simultaneously or in parallel. So without further ado, moving into the closing phase or closing process group, finalizing all activities and formally completes the project. Right, the main goals are to verify the deliverables and release the resources. Key outputs are the final product or service / lessons learned and project closure report. An example of this is conducting a project post-project review after launching a marketing campaign. And so this is where you'll finalize the product or service that you have, ensuring that the stakeholders are happy and satisfied with your project. And then you'll document all the things that you've learned throughout the process and the project while also formally closing it, right? Ensuring that the project has met all criteria, everything is done, and then finally when you release the resources. You okay? Okay. I apologize. My dog, like, she was choking. Definitely was a little scared there for a sec. Okay. So moving forward, we're moving on to knowledge areas, right? The backbone of expertise, right? There's 10 knowledge areas that organize the processes within the framework. So I'm just going to read through them. I'm not going to read all the definitions. If you guys have the book in front of you, which I hope you do, I want you to read through these definitions because they're important to know while you're looking at each processes and understanding where they fit in which process, because not each knowledge area is going to be used for each process. So you have integration management, scope management, schedule management, cost management, quality management, resource management, communication management, risk management, procurement management, and stakeholder management. Now, all these processes, right, are things that you need to account for within each project. And so that's why they are the knowledge areas that are the processes are based on, right? Or the processes tackle, right? So we just had to keep that in mind. I want you to understand that. And the processing map game will help you understand that. So 3, the 49 processes. We're finally going to get into each one. I'm not going to read through every single one of them because there's 49 of them. It's going to waste your time. I want you guys to look at every single one of them while you're doing the process map game. And I'm going to reiterate that at the end of this day. But while you're doing the processing map game, you'll start to develop an understanding of what goes where and how, right? And if you don't, right, you can have this book up, this information up while you're going through the game in order to help you, right? And eventually you'll get to the point where it's just second nature and you understand what is where. But until you get to that point, use this as a resource to get you there. So we have 2 processes in the initiating process group, right? Develop project charter, identify stakeholders. We have 24 in the planning process group. And this is where you're going to do a majority of your work, right? You have to plan, specifically in a traditional or predictive methodology. You have to plan and articulate meticulously what you need to do in each process, right? And there's going to be very specific to what you're doing. It's going to be, each process is going to have a very specific task that you have to complete. And so you have to manage this as a project manager effectively and enable your team members to take on different portions of this process because this is going to take a long time. You guys are going to go and create the WBS and plan schedule management and define some of the activities and sequence the activities and estimate activity durations, and all that's going to be in the WBS. And then it all kind of fits into one another, right? But at the end of the day, the main process is to develop the project management plan, and the output is going to be for you that project management plan that you can move forward with, that's approved by the stakeholders and approved by the sponsors, right? And so this is going to be a very, very process heavy phase and process group, but you just got to make sure that you understand how they all relate to one another. And then moving to the executing process phase or process group, which is only 10 processes, but it encompasses a lot of the same things that are in the planning phase. It's just you're executing those things that you have created. And so it's important that you, and I say a lot of things are important. A lot of this information is important, and that's why I put it in the book. I only put things that are important in the book, but you'll see how they relate to one another and how they relate to the PMI talent triangle and where you'll need to leverage leadership versus technical knowledge versus strategic goals, right? And then monitoring and controlling process group or phase, it has 12 processes. This is going to help you control the quality, control the scope, costs, right? Perform integrated change control, all those things, right? Monitor stakeholder engagement. And then finally, the last group, which is the closing process group, which has 1 process, right? And it's where you close the project or phase. So the summary for this is that you'll have 49 processes, right? There's 10 knowledge areas that are going to affect each process, and there's 10 knowledge areas that the process is focused on. And so it's usually one process is going to focus on one knowledge area, right? But something like the project management plan encompasses a lot of the knowledge areas, and so that's what you need to focus on when it comes to learning these process areas, is which knowledge area affects which process, and you'll see that in the process mapping game. So interactions with the framework. We're going to talk about these a lot because these play a huge role in the processes themselves, but inputs, tools, techniques, and outputs, or ITTOs. Every process is defined by the inputs, data, or resources required to begin the process, tools and techniques, the methods or systems used to perform the process, and the outputs, the deliverables or results produced by the process itself. An example is for create the WBS process, you'll have an input of the scope statement, right? What are we trying to solve? The tool and technique is a decomposition of that scope statement. Okay, this is what we're trying to solve. How do we solve it? What are the tasks that go into solving that problem? And then output is the work breakdown structure, right? The WBS that you will use that has all the activities that you have to accomplish in order for you to accomplish the overall deliverable, right? Or a goal or problem that you want to solve, right? So connecting the problem or the framework to real world scenarios. I run through some scenarios here that talk about how you initiate, plan, execute, monitor, and control and close on different types of projects. So let's go with building a new school. I'm just only going to read one, but I want you guys to go through and kind of gain an understanding of how you would use this in different industries. So the first one is building a new school, where initiating, you begin drafting a project charter to outline the project's purpose, providing a new educational facility for the community, that's the purpose, and identify stakeholders such as local authorities, school boards, and construction firms. Why are those stakeholders? Well, stakeholders are people that are affected by the project, right? And so obviously local authorities, school boards, and construction firms are key players in building a school, right? Or educational facility. So you have to engage with them in order to get their insight, in order to get their approval, yada, yada, yada. Planning phase. So you develop a work breakdown structure that includes tasks like site preparation, foundation work, and classroom construction. Create a project schedule using the critical path method to ensure timely completion, and identify potential risks such as material shortages or weather delays, and plan contingencies, right? This is going to be where you do most of your legwork because you have to plan accordingly, specifically with predictive and traditional, in order for you to have an effective execution phase. So getting into the execution phase for this type of project, you're going to assign teams for construction phases, one for foundation work, another for framing, and others for plumbing and electrical systems. Regularly communicate progress to stakeholders and ensure quality standards are met, right? While you're doing this as a project manager, you're overseeing, you're not doing the legwork. And that needs to be understood. You need to be the person that is managing the personnel, managing the progress, because if you're not staying on that type of note, you're going to find yourself in the weeds and you're going to find yourself behind in other areas where they needed you to manage, right? Because people may lose sight of the progress that they need to make, and they may lose sight of the timeline or the cost or the budget that they're working within. And so you have to be there to auto correct those personnel and teams. And then we're going to get into the monitoring and controlling phase, where you compare progress again against the project schedule and budget baselines. And these are baselines that you created during the planning phase. If delays occur due to unforeseen weather, adjust the timeline and allocate additional resources as needed. And so that's where your contingencies come into play. And that's why you planned contingencies for things like weather delays, manufacturing delays, yada, yada, yada. So finally, it moves into the closing phase, where you'll conduct the final inspection with the stakeholders to ensure the school meets all requirements, document lessons learned to improve processes for future construction projects, and then formally hand over the completed building. And that's what makes a project, right? You have something that's unique and it has a finite timeline. So I want you guys to go through the next scenarios, understanding software development, how this will play into that, how the framework will play into that, as well as launching a marketing campaign. These are some of the most common scenarios you'll find yourself in as a project manager, and that's why we incorporated them in the book. So making the framework your own, right? The beauty of PMP framework is its adaptability. Whether you're constructing buildings, developing software, or launching marketing campaigns, the process groups and knowledge areas can be tailored to fit your project's needs. And that's why the framework is important, and that's why PMI created this, right? Project Management Institute created this, because you can have this common language between industries that's still effective, right? Common processes, common methodologies, right? Risk management tools and analysis tools that you would use that are standard, right? It kind of standardizes these things so that everybody's speaking the same language. So common mistakes to avoid, right? Overlooking stakeholders. Missing stakeholders during initiation can lead to issues later. And right now I'm looking at a graphic that's in the book, figure 3.1, common mistakes. Skipping detailed planning, right? Insufficient planning results in scope creep, right? We'll talk about scope creep later on. And then neglecting change control. Unmanaged changes can derail the project. And so make sure that you understand some of these common mistakes. But we'll get into these later on, and we'll talk about them a little bit more in depth later on when we talk about some of these processes themselves when we get into each day. That's going to be next week. Then we have 5 key terms for day 3, which is process groups, knowledge areas, processes, inputs, tools, techniques, outputs, that's ITTOs, and then the project management framework. Make sure that you understand those at a key level. If you've been doing the key terms on the Quizlet link that I provided, and now we're going to talk about the end of day reflection, where we want you to reflect on the projects you've managed or participated in. Can you identify how each process group has played a role? And then tomorrow we'll dive deeper into the PMBOK guide itself, exploring how its components integrate traditional, agile, and hybrid approaches. And if you still want to study, we have the processing map game and the flashcards down below with the QR codes. Make sure that you're doing this every single day because it's important that you understand the terms, but also understand the processes. This is going to help you tremendously as we navigate throughout these days and begin to build on some knowledge. So without further ado, thank you for making it through day 3. It's important that if you haven't already, like and subscribe, hit the notification bell, and we'll see you tomorrow. Peace.